Welcome, everybody. It's a real pleasure for me today to chair this session, as I have been chairing the Open Science Policy Platform for the last 2 years, working with these fantastic people that they are together with me today in this session. I will just try to make a brief introduction. I suppose that I didn't want to be a speaker today, but I have to do a brief introduction to can I share my screen, or you will do it, Sergio?
You can do it, yeah.
Okay, well, I will share mine then. Let me check for the, here we are. Okay. So this is, okay. So I will share my own slides. Can you see my slides now? Well, yes, here you are. Okay, so I was saying to you that I will make a very brief introduction about what it was the Open Science Policy Platform, and I just put a title of my presentation, 4 years shaping up open science in Europe, because we were a group of stakeholders where EGI was one of the members, and we were just trying to exactly shaping up the open science policies, just advising the Commission with the approach bottom up. I mean, we are the stakeholders, we represent different institutions. I was representing the universities, the Young European Research University Network. Sergio was representing EGI. Rebecca, that she will talk about the final report afterwards. She was representing the publishers and open access publishers. And we have a bunch of people with different interests, and we were trying to shape the open science in Europe. And what we are going to tell you today is, I will just make a big picture of what it was these 4 years and 2 mandates, who were there, why we were there, what we did, and also the principal outcomes. And the principal outcomes are pretty much 2 recommendations, and also the second mandate we focus on implementation. I miss an end there. And we really want to change the mind from the recommendations and the reports and making just yet another declaration. That's what I say there, no more Bs, because Bs was the declaration of Berlin, Becerra, Budapest, and we didn't want to do yet another declaration. We decided to make a practical commitment for implementation, which is what Rebecca will just briefly tell you. This is who we were. This is the picture in March 2017, if I recall properly, with the previous chair of the Open Science Policy Platform, Johannes Vogel, that he was the first chair of the platform. He was representing the European Open Science, the European Citizen Science Association, excuse me. And also you have here the representatives of Open Science Platform intermediaries, where Rebecca and Sergio were part of that. So this was the collection of 25 stakeholders. I always say that we all are stakeholders of open science, but we are not the stakeholders. We, of course, have more people there that we want to hear. And this is the picture of the very end of the platform, the last meeting in February this year, February 2020. And when we have changed the commissioner, we have changed the director general, we have changed some of the faces, but we didn't change our objectives. We keep working to shaping up open science from the perspective of the stakeholders. And also we have this Twitter account that we have now almost 2,000 followers, because we want to hear you, all the people that they might be also interested in having a say in the open science in Europe. This was the scenario when we started in 2016. It was kind of different frameworks, different recommendations, different working groups. Also, there were some conditions and some discussions about text and data mining, data protection. It was when there was created, the GDPR was created, all this copyright modification. It was a lot of discussion in different parts. And also we come up with these open science agenda challenges, which is the ones that we really embrace, that it was these 8 challenges. And also we have other groups or other high-level expert groups working in different points that they will report to the Commission, and they will report also to the Open Science Policy Platform, and then we will just try to make an advice to the European Commission. That's why our first outcome was called the general advice, or the recommendations, or the integrated advice, because we try to integrate all these many voices from different high-level expert groups in different perspectives to a stakeholder base. And this is what it was at the end. We had a lot of reports, a lot of recommendations. I have counting them lately, I don't remember exactly, but we are close to 100 recommendations in more than 8 reports. And also we have a nightmare of recommending and reports and things. That's why we just came up with, at the end of the first mandate, with the OSPP REC, which was the recommendation, the integrated report, where we address the main topics, the 8 challenges, where European Open Science Cloud and fair data were also there. And we try to close these challenges just by a stakeholder. So we have these challenges, we come up with the idea, and we are all agree upon this, that the rewards and incentive system was the bottleneck of all these challenges. So we decided to focus there. That was why Rebecca was chairing a lot of the work that we did in the new indicators, in the new rewards and incentive system, how we can come up with something different to make open science happen. And also we have this transversal approach by a stakeholder, where every single stakeholder come through all the 8 challenges and have a say on fair data, EOSC, future of scholarly communication. You can say EGI has not very much to say on the future of scholarly communication, but anyhow, we go to all these recommendations for every stakeholder recognized in the platform. But in the second mandate, we passed this modus of recommendation to the implementation mode. So we don't want to have more reports and recommendations, and we want to have PCIs, which is what we call the practical commitment for implementation, that I will explain you a little bit in my next slide. And so you can understand better the report, and also you can understand better the final commitment of EGI, what EGI did. And we call it this practical commitment for implementation. And also we call this period, the period of, darling, we need to talk. I always have this joke with my colleagues, and I say, this is the time that we need to talk. And when you say, darling, we need to talk, you know that this is something is going to change. You don't know what is going to change, but you know that something is going to change. So we keep talking, we keep discussing, we open the Open Science Policy Platform to other stakeholders, trying to organize stakeholder meetings, trying to organize discussions, and also we want to have this practical commitment for implementation at a stakeholder level or at individual level. And also we wanted to interconnect and map all the projects working in open science, because there are many actors, the SWAFS program, the e-infras, all the ecosystem of European Open Science Cloud, all the FAIR approaches. We want to just have a clear interconnection of these projects, which is not very easy. And I think we didn't succeed on doing the whole picture, and I'm still working on that sense. And also another objective that we have in this period was aligning the member states' policies with the stakeholders' approaches. What happened that we all were in the OSPP representing stakeholders that they have a pan-European coverage. For example, I will put you my example, and Sergio will put you EGI example, but in the case of the JERUN, the Young European Research University Network, I was representing 17 universities in 12 countries. As soon as you want to implement something, particularly in the reward system, you bump into the national policy. So for us, it was very important to align the objectives of the OSPP with the objectives of the member states' individual policies. And after this, in October 2018, we organized a joint meeting, and this is what it was born, what is called CONOSC, which is the Council for National Open Science Coordination, which is kind of coordinating different national representatives, national coordinators in different countries to align these policies with the general objectives of OSPP. And also I'm now just trying to put in touch these people of the CONOSC network, of the CONOSC Council, with other countries that they are not only European, because I think open science should be global. So the coordination should be working at an international, a global level. Oh, sorry. So what are PCIs for open science, which was our main commitment in the second mandate? The PCIs are practical commitments for implementation. So they have to be practical, they have to be committed, they have to be commitments regarding any aspect or any challenge of open science. You can address fair data. Okay, I have a commitment with fair data, or I have a commitment with changing the reward system. Okay, you have to have a commitment in a specific challenge, but also you have to be realistic and it has to be affordable. Why? Because if it is not affordable, it cannot be practically implemented. So that's why we say that we need to have jurisdiction. For example, if I try to change the national policy in Spain, I cannot do it because it is not my kingdom. Perhaps I can do something at general level, at the stakeholder level, or in my own university. So what you have to see in PCIs in EGI is what you can do as EGI, as you can do in general terms. And also it has to have a clear effect. It has to be clearly implementable. It's not just a recommendation, it's not just a dream, it's not just a toast to the sun, as we say in Spanish, which is very funny that we say this is kind of we want to change the reward system. Okay, thank you very much, but we cannot do it. So, and the other thing is that you have to ask yourself, what can I do for open science? And if you can say something that you really can do, this is a practical commitment for implementation. And this is why we come up with this final report that has, well, I will not tell you because Rebecca will do it much better than me. She was the coordinator of the rapporteur of this final report. But in this final report, we gather all the practical commitments for implementation of different stakeholders represented in the platform. And also we have just, again, an approach to the future and thinking on how we can share research and knowledge in a new knowledge system. So I will not just go further. I will be very happy to discuss with you about practical commitments for implementation or whatever. But I think the best person to present this is now Rebecca. I will give you the floor and I will just let you share your screen when I introducing you. Well, probably you have seen the invited speakers, biographies and the description of them. But I will say, if I have to introduce Rebecca, I will say that she is a practical commitment for implementation herself. She is practical, she's committed, and she has implemented open science in her business. So I think it's fantastic to have her in the team because she's always a guarantee of the keep things done. Thank you very much one more time, Rebecca, for this. And she's currently the managing director of F1000 Research, which, as you know, that is a platform. We can say it's a journal, it's a platform, it's a research platform. And now we are dealing with platforms with diamond approaches to open access. So this is kind of one of the first ones, and she has been responsible for launching this platform in 2013, but afterwards she has been working on other funders and other institution-based publishing platforms. So now she's also working in ORCID that perhaps you can discuss at the end. I have a question about that for you at the end, if we can have some debate. But now I would just give the floor to Rebecca and she will tell us how we come up with this practical commitment for implementations, and we shape it in a final report of our work. Thank you, Rebecca. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eva, for the very kind introduction, and thank you very much to Sergio and EGI for the opportunity to talk to you all today about the final report of the OSPP. So as Eva just mentioned, we had two-year mandates. The first was led to the publication of the OSPP REC, which is a whole series of recommendations. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. And then the second mandate was very much shifting from those recommendations to much more implementation mode and the PCIs that Eva just described, with a particular focus on thinking about next generation metrics, rewards and incentives. And the recommendations and indeed the PCIs are really around a set of core stakeholder communities that made up the OSPP, and I've listed those on the right hand side there, so you can see what we comprised. So the aims of the final report, which came out in May this year, are really two things. One was to review progress against those OSPP REC recommendations that we put out 2 years earlier. And also to then provide a vision going forward beyond open science, and I'll explain why in a minute, to a shared research knowledge system by 2030. So looking at the first part and the sort of review of these recommendations. So the OSPP REC focused on each of the 8 pillars of open science that the European Commission came up with following the Amsterdam Call on Open Science back in 2016. And what we did following all those different expert group reports that Eva mentioned was pull together a combined set of recommendations on each of those 8 areas. And then alongside those, we looked at which were the stakeholders that we felt had the most, or even were in the best position to have the most responsibility for actually implementing those recommendations. And you can see top right as an example of what these recommendations look like. So there are always sort of 2 to 4 recommendations, and you can see with the color coding, you know, who are the key parties that were most responsible for actually delivering on those. So when we then came at the end of the second mandate to look at what's the progress since that OSPP REC and you know what are the key outcomes from there, there were three key things that came from it. One was a registry of pilots and implementations of responsible metrics. One was appointment of open science coordinators and task forces for the implementation of open science. And the third one was a collated series of PCIs. So I'll go through each of these in turn. So just a bit of background on the registry. So there are a lot of reports and frameworks out there around use of responsible metrics, or responsible use of metrics, I should say. Key examples: Leiden Manifesto, the Metric Tide. Yeah, there's a number of these reports that really give very good frameworks to use. There was also a report that came out last year by Paul Wouters and colleagues, which has a sort of builds on the Leiden Manifesto and the Metric Tide, and it really provides a series of frameworks as to how to get started and how to really move things forwards. Some of the key things that we felt were really crucial in terms of using these frameworks and tools were to make sure that we're very careful that we manage and plan for unintended consequences or even potential steering effects of those indicators, where, you know, we may replace one system with another system, but we need to be aware of the impact that that will have and how it will change behavior, not always necessarily in the direction that we were wanting or that is, you know, hoped for. We also wanted to make sure we're very careful not to create incentives for superficial change in behavior, where it's simply a matter of trying to tick boxes to say and make it look like change had happened, but actually really fundamentally the system hadn't changed. And then also crucially, to avoid, again, swapping, say, one indicator with another indicator, because you really need to look at what indicators are most suitable for the particular situation, whether it's a particular discipline, whether it's a particular project, the type of entity you're measuring, etc. So we've got a lot of frameworks, we've got an awful lot of indicators. So one of the things in that WANSES report I just mentioned is at the end there is a huge table. I think there's about 140 indicators in there. This is just a screenshot example of it with all the sort of color codings. It's a really excellent table that looks at strengths and weaknesses and potentials and risks of each of these different indicators and where and how they're being used and how you might use them. So it's a fantastic resource, but there's a huge number of indicators in there. There's even a periodic table of scientometric indicators. So there's a huge range of indicators. We're not short of them. We may need some others, but we're certainly not short of them. We also have something called OZCAM, which is Open Science Career Assessment Matrix, which is in one of the expert reports that came out a couple of years ago. And this is a matrix that was developed to really help organizations in thinking about how to assess researchers beyond particularly venue, publications or venue of publications, and how to maybe think about other areas and other things, to think about other things that you might want to assess as part of that. And many groups are starting to look at how to integrate that with existing systems. So we have all these tools, but we were looking at, well, what's hampering uptake? And our sense was that there is a real lack of exemplars and a lack of an evidence base of what works and what doesn't, and of similar examples and really how to get started. You know, a lot of people we would talk to very keen to start to adjust the evaluation system, but just don't know where to start and really keen to see, well, what have others done and did it work and didn't it work, etc. So the point of the registry is really to capture that range of what's going on out there of exemplars, and call for more groups and organizations to pilot or indeed implement new policies, and then openly share what they learn from that implementation. It's been coordinated now, very pleased that it's been coordinated by the Research Data Alliance, which makes this not just a European effort, but a global effort, which is crucial. As Ava said earlier, you know, science is global, so we really need to coordinate globally. We're working with DORA as well, so the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, trying to pull together the key initiatives that are happening around the world to really shift the evaluation system. And the aim here is to create a highly structured and searchable registry, so that you can go in and look at, you know, an organization like me, or a situation, a department, you know, in this discipline, in, you know, in this particular area, you know, what have others done and how did that work? The idea is that you come in, you register your pilot and give initial details about what you're planning to do and what you're planning to measure and what change you're planning to make. And then you also commit to coming back 1 to 2 years later, or whenever is most appropriate, depending on what the pilot is or the implementation that you're doing, and you report on the outcome. You know, did it have the desired effect? And what were unintended consequences it had? So you see both the positive and the negative side. And ideally, we also want the fair data that sits behind that analysis, so others can look at it and learn from it. And the idea is very much that we have an open evaluation of pilots and dissemination of those results, so it can support uptake and broader adoption by others. Ava also mentioned the open science coordinators, and one of the things that we called for in our recommendations was the appointment of more national coordinators and task forces for the implementation of open science. In fact, in 2018, there were a number of national coordinators appointed already and developing national open science plans, such as Finland, Ireland, and France. And these are really crucial because of the different elements of the stakeholders around open science. It's crucial that they discuss together. It's very hard to make any progress as an individual stakeholder group. It really requires that coordination. In 2019, in October, there was then the launch of CONOS, the Council of National Open Science Coordination, and the aim really was to fill in gaps around open science coordination across the European research area, and as Ava says, ideally also then more broadly and globally, and also to provide insight on activities so that different countries could learn from each other as to what's working and what isn't. We then looked at the PCIs themselves and asked all the stakeholders as part of the OSPP to review the recommendations, to capture the PCIs that they'd been doing, and to categorise the progress that they felt that their community had made towards the recommendations, and also to identify blockers. The good news is in 5 of those 8 pillars of open science, there was real consensus about where we'd got to, and in fact, in most cases, there was a sense that there were examples of implementation in each of these examples. There were, though, 3 areas: research integrity, skills and education, and citizen science, where there was real disparity of views. And it was really interesting that those stakeholder communities that were most charged with making progress typically felt that we were at the adoption phase, maybe even it was common practice. Whereas those around those other stakeholders typically felt we really hadn't got very far and that we were very much at discussion and planning stage. There was a real disparity in those views. And so given that, we felt it was really important that there is a constructive dialogue to understand why there's disparity, so that we don't end up with a situation of polarization. Because it may be that we all have a different perspective as to what success looks like and where we're all trying to get to. It may be that indeed progress has been made and it hasn't been shared very effectively, but we need to understand what those issues are. We also really felt that one of the crucial things that needs to happen going forward is to bring industry much more into the discussions around open science. There's a lot of public-private partnerships, and typically much of the discussion on open science focuses around academia and doesn't involve the challenges that industry face in moving towards open science. And so there really needs to be more debate and discussion together. We were also very aware that we really need a framework to make sure that by opening up knowledge, we don't inadvertently disadvantage those players that are already underprivileged. There's a full list of all the PCIs and blockers by actor, so it's very detailed and structured in the annex at the end of the report, and I encourage you to go and have a look at that. The second part of the report was focusing on a vision for moving beyond open science to a shared research knowledge system by 2030. And the background on this and why we felt this was really important was partially because we felt open science is progressing slower than I think many of us certainly anticipated or hoped. And there are some key obstacles that are remaining. So there's a real disparity in both progress, but also motivation to shift towards open science, particularly across different disciplines, but also between different types of institutions, actors, and indeed researchers at different career stages. There's also a real lack of alignment, particularly internationally, but even when you look nationally or regionally or even locally, there are differences, and you know, this is part of the point of the national coordinators to at least help at the national level. And there's insufficient cost-benefit analysis of open science requirements. The other thing we felt was really important is that open science isn't an end in itself. We've spent the last few years really focusing down on open science and implementing open science, that I think we all had the sense that we'd kind of forgotten why, or as a broader community, we'd almost forgotten why we were doing open science and why those principles are so crucial to science and society as a whole. And so what we wanted to do was kind of pull back and look at the broader picture and highlight, you know, obviously open science progress is crucial to success more broadly, but really make sure that we put it in context. Obviously, with COVID-19, I think there's been a real demonstration that we've been able to make much faster progress in, insights into the spread and mitigation of COVID-19 by working in a much more open science way and sharing knowledge and collaborating. And so I think it's really important that we leverage that and those lessons that we've learned there to make much more structural changes to the research system so that all fields can get the benefit of advancing more rapidly and more effectively. And so we call on the European member states and other relevant actors to co-create, develop and maintain a research system based on shared research knowledge. So there were 5 key attributes for that. The first was around an academic career structure to foster outputs, practices and behaviours to maximise contributions to the shared knowledge system. A second is around having reliable, transparent and trustworthy science. The third is around making sure that the system enables innovation. The fourth is ensuring we have a culture that facilitates diversity and equity of opportunity. And the last one is around making sure the system is built on evidence-based policy and practice. So I will summarise these very quickly and then wrap up. So in terms of the academic career structure, the focus really is to empower researchers with a reward system that encourages them to collaborate and share their work openly and be creative, honest and transparent. And that all the actors in the system need to explore and openly report new ways of doing this. And that's really what the registry is about. And it's crucial to remember that no one size will fit all, as I pointed out earlier. Secondly, a focus around the system being reliable, transparent and trustworthy, and really looking at making sure that we really use this as one of the methods in research or researcher evaluation. So we do have codes of conduct out there, but there's actually very little data on whether they improve research practice or indeed are being adhered to or enforced. And so we think this is something that's really important. And we need to make sure that we're encouraging sharing of all sorts of findings to reduce publication bias, and that really member states need to develop workshops and training and support to enable this. The third is around a system to enable innovation and making sure we've got clear policies to increase availability and reuse of knowledge in a global competitive context, that we have interoperable infrastructure, again, that those are interoperable globally. We have clear regulatory frameworks and a transparent competitive market, and that the research system is based on reciprocity and not just focused nationally. The fourth is around facilitating diversity and opportunity, and this is about making sure that the knowledge system is open and equitable to all, and that it transcends disciplines, organisations, culture and politics, and again that all the actors are involved in creating a legal and social framework to support this. And finally, that we have a system that's built on evidence-based and practice. And so there is quite a bit of meta research out there, but there's a real lack of translation of that into policy. And so we need to make sure as we make changes to the system, we're really doing it based on evidence, and that we have a funding and program to really look at research on research and really analyze this properly. So I'll summarise there. Thank you very much. I'd like to really thank all the OSPP members and Ava particularly as our chair in pulling this together, and also the EC's research and innovation team, particularly Jean-Claude Bergelmann, René van Schomburg and Costas Glynis for all their support. And you can access the report there or just go to the EC site and type OSPP. I will pass back to Ava. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. I was just thinking on using my fantastic background and saying, please, 2 minutes, but I didn't need. No, you were perfect on timing. And I don't know if we have any burning question. For those that you are in an attendance mode, you can use the raise your hand. So we can just give you the floor to talk and open your microphone, or just you can use the chat or the Q&A for questions. I would just give a minute for some burning question to Rebecca, to me on the general approach of the OSPP. Okay, yes, just probably it's better if we just let Sergio, which is your representative in the OSPP, that can just give all these ideas that we were sharing with you a sense of community as you are in EGI. I know that you know everybody probably knows Sergio, but he's the head of strategy and innovation and communication of the EGI Foundation. And in his role, he contributes to strategic planning and execution, governance and business models. And also he has other responsibilities on contributing and developing project proposals. And also he was the person designated to be in the OSPP as a representative of EGI. And he has a master and PhD and everything on computer science. So he's a very good representative of the technological part of the open science that I think is crucial if we think about the main FAIR data and EOSC challenges. I just will give the floor to Sergio so he can tell you what you have done or EGI has done as a community for the implementation of open science in your world. Sergio, whatever you want, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eva, for the introduction. Can you please confirm that you see my slides in full screen? So I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So following the presentation from Eva, who gave a background on the OSPP activities and the motivations to do the work and what we have achieved, and also on the results presented by Rebecca. What I would like to do in this presentation is to move more on to zoom in the EGI Federation and into what were the practical commitments for implementations that we have identified and what will be done so far and where we stand with regards to, as a community, to support the implementation of the OSPP recommendations for open science. Before zooming into the list of the PCIs, I would like to give a short overview of the activities and the dialogues within the community around open science that happened in the EGI context. And as most of you know, the EGI Federation was created in 2010 as a result of a series of EC funded projects in the area of distributed computing. At the time, okay, it was very popular, the paradigm of grid computing, now became cloud, but it's all about federation pulling together infrastructures, services, expertise, and various resources to enable research. And at the time, already in 2012, when we were trying to analyze what is this kind of federation we are building, and so the concept of openness was very important. That has been at the at the core of the EGI Federation, and we made an analysis of how this EGI Federation can be seen as an ecosystem of resources that are available for research, and what does it mean for this to be open. We found, at the time, we found an interesting paper. It was a policy paper that was defining what you need to put in place or to consider when you have an open ICT ecosystem. It was a policy paper from the Harvard Law School. And we used that paper to map it to EGI, and we published that report. So following that, okay, that was the idea of EGI as an open infrastructure. Then in 2014, with the push from the EC on that time, there was lots of focus on the open access policy for those of you that were already part in EC funded projects. And also we had a session at an EGI conference, was a previous edition at that time, was physical, and about how EGI can help to make open access, to facilitate open access for research outputs. And following that discussion, also in that period, I remember there was a kind of shaping of the EC policies towards open science. It's becoming so broadening the dialogue on openness from open infrastructure, open access to research data to open science in general. And when thinking about how to evolve our vision, we came with this idea of we saw that in different contexts, like, I don't know, the ERG was talking about the e-infrastructure commons, and then there were other types of knowledge commons around the community. We thought about maybe we can see open science as a commons where we basically consider all the resource systems that are needed to conduct open science. They should be a shared good, and they should be managed by the community. So the community should have influence on the rules that govern them as a commons. So at the time, okay, we had a vision paper. Also at the conference, we have a full day conference session on this topic. And also that was the vision that was underpinning our EGI Engage project, which was a previous EC funded project as a flagship initiative from the EGI community. So the open science took off in that period quite strongly, and also within the EC, and the EC created the OSPP expert group. And I was very happy to be selected as a member of this group. So we started the work in 2016, 2018, we had the first main publication on the policies. And also it was the start of the EOSC Hub project, which is currently the flagship project we are contributing and leading to implement the European Open Science Cloud. And finally, this year, before the summer, the OSPP came with the final report on the summary of the work, 4 years of activities, the recommendations published in 2018, and how well the community is building, is implementing changes to make those recommendations a reality. So this was a kind of journey on the openness within EGI. I would like now to zoom on where we have been contributing so far in the areas of the priorities for open science identified by the EC agenda. And Eva before presented the 8 priorities. As EGI, we've been mainly directly active in those 4. And we have an indirect participation in citizen science, but not as an EGI. We are mainly supporting a community to run open science initiatives for citizens, but not directly as EGI Federation. So we'll now move to a few of them to tell you, I mean, from our viewpoint, what does it mean to implement open science? What have we been doing? And what does it mean to take recommendations and then try to implement them? So one, for instance, was in the area of research indicator next generation metrics. Our recommendations was to identify quantitative qualitative indicators to measure and assess open science contributions in a wider context. And there was an expert group who published a very extensive report on how metrics indicators should evolve to better stimulate and measure open science. The annex of the report that you see linked into the slide contains a very huge list of open science indicators that have been collected. So the PCI we got was to identify those indicators that are applicable to the EGI Federation and monitor and publish them on an annual basis. And we are still in the analysis phase for these indicators. And but just to give some example of what are those that could apply to EGI, it could be, for instance, how many software being deposited with an open source compatible license, or how many citations for software being done in publications, or how many open collaboration services are available within the Federation. And the idea, by the end of this year, we want to make this first analysis, and then next year we want to start measuring them and publishing on a yearly basis, and then see, maybe review how useful they are and how effective to stimulate, understand what's happening in terms of open science, and also to measure it. The second PCI is still in the area of one of the recommendations was that all researchers need to be identified through an ORCID ID. And the idea is that if you have a common identifier across researchers, and then maybe they produce little bits of contributions to open science, it can be a piece of software, it can be a publication, it can be an abstract, it can be a blog post, or workflow, anything. Then you can able to link all the contributions of researchers and measure their participation in open science processes. So what we did, we expanded, we have one of the services from the EGI Federation is a proxy to allow researchers to log in into services using their own authentication. That was expanded to also to support ORCID ID as a source of identification. So in this way, I mean, the information of what is the ORCID ID for the researcher would be available to the service being used, and they can be used to track the contribution in the activities. This has been released only a few weeks ago, so it's very fresh. It's also available in the OSC portal, AI. The next one is the, in the area of, we go, okay, in the area of the European Open Science Cloud. This is one of the, probably the biggest priority for the EGI Federation. The recommendation, there is a key recommendations on making the EOSC compatible among the existing initiatives like national infrastructure, regional infrastructures, or more global, and to ensure interoperability and the free movement of information across boundaries. So for the EGI, we have a strong commitment to develop the EOSC, and that's why, for instance, we co-created the project, the EOSC Hub, that we are currently leading, which presents the first implementation of the EOSC core and also provides an initial service catalog of services for both common services, more horizontal services, and also thematic services built with many organizations that participated in the project. So the project will end in March, and there are more than 100 organizations involved. So it's quite a big one. Also, we put EOSC at the center of one of the strategic goals of the new strategy for the EGI Federation. We say that we want the EGI Federation to be recognized as a foundation of the EOSC. And also we created a flagship project that we are very happy that was positively evaluated by the EC, which is called EGI ACE, and has the goal of delivering the EOSC computing platform starting from 2021. And as a more policy-related initiative, today after the session, there will be a workshop called the Global Open Science Cloud, which is co-created with CoData. And that's also another initiative we've been contributing to expand the dialogue between outside Europe on the topic of the Open Science Cloud. Next recommendation still in the EOSC areas that we need to have a long-term baseline funding to ensure the EOSC ecosystem will thrive and be available, free to use for research and education. And in this area, we are contributing to the dialogue and analysis on business models for EOSC. And we have outputs from the EOSC project that we have injected into the EOSC Sustainability Working Group. And we hope we contribute and facilitate the identification of the best business models to enable the EOSC evolve. And the final report is expected for March, with the end of EOSC Hub project. Moving to the area of here actually is a joint contribution. There's a bit mapping on the EOSC and also on the skills and education. On the EOSC, one of the recommendations says that all researchers must receive appropriate EOSC training, and the skills education says that work towards the design of appropriate open science trainings. So training, of course, is very important to train the current researchers, but also new generations into operating more in a collaborative way and understanding how to use the all available resources and infrastructure that allow them to operate, especially when you need to combine large scale data from different sources. You need the specialized computing platforms that are essential nowadays to conduct open science. And in this area, also within the OZCAM project, we had training activity. So we developed a number of trainings, especially in the context of EGI. These trainings are more about how to use technical tools like Jupyter Notebooks or Binder technology to conduct open science analysis. And these are being made freely available in the OZCAM training portal. And also we are working on an e-learning platform based on the Open EDX as a way to also not just consume documents, but also maybe have trainings more like videos and so on that can be autonomously used. Moving to the area of FAIR, as you know, FAIR is very popular and a key pillar of the EOSC. FAIR is an acronym standing for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. As you know, so the recommendations here, data results from publicly funded research must be made fair and citable and be as open as possible, as close as necessary. As you know, the EGI Federation is mainly focusing on supporting researchers to access, remix, and analyze data. So we are not a producer of data as a raw material that comes usually from the research communities, but data usually is becoming increasingly big, increasingly distributed, and you need platforms to use them. You cannot just have access them from a website and download them because they are too big for your local computer. So the idea for the EGI is to contribute in making the data accessible and reusable. Of the 4 letters that were our main focus, and we are promoting this idea of the data-centric computing. That also is the key of the next flagship project, EGI ACE, where we stimulated the creation of a number of data spaces that are related to the recently published EC strategy. Also, what we want to do, we want to conduct a fair maturity assessment of the services covered by the EGI ACE to understand how much those services are can support fair data in the different stages of the life cycle. And in summary, what we have seen that the EGI Federation is an open ecosystem that has been built to pull together resources, services, and expertise. They exist from the community. So the idea is to lower the barrier, integrate, and make them accessible. All these various resources needed to conduct science. And the governance of the EGI has been built as an open governance, and all organizations can join and participate also in the decision making on how to evolve the strategy. And we've been also enabling open science practices, especially with in the area of advanced computing and data analytics. So the many contributions are in the area of open standards adoption, the co-creation of the EOSC, and then the bridging communities for knowledge sharing across borders, like we are doing with this conference, for instance. And finally, to focus on simplify the access and reuse of data for research communities. And that was my last slide. So I'm happy to take any questions or give the word back to Eva.
Perfect, again, perfect timing. We started a bit late, but I think we are just switching time to have a bit of couple of questions. I have been following the chat and I asked our Zoom hero, Andrea, to open the microphone for Sean, because it was a question that probably it would be better to say it in loud voice than if I read it about the trust on ORCID.
Yeah.
So
I'm very, thanks. Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, for the very interesting talks. So I've got one question for Sergio. I'm very pleased to see that you've integrated ORCID into the authentication mechanism, but what level of trust does logging in with your ORCID provide if your ORCID isn't directly linked to your research AI?
Yeah, this one, that's the question is very clear. I don't have the answer now because I was not involved into the implementation, so I don't know the details of how it was implemented. I don't know if the ORCID ID is coupled with a more stronger authentication, for instance, from your organization, like the organizational ID, or if it is just, it can be used independently. So this I need to check with my colleague who worked on the implementation. But that's a very important question because of course it needs to be, ideally probably you want to use you want to be able to combine with a more stronger authentication.
Yeah. So if
the contribution,
yeah, I don't know whether you can link your institutional login to the ORCID ID or I don't know.
I will check later today with my colleagues and we'll get you back.
Okay. And I have another question. Well, not so much a question or a comment to Rebecca and Ava, because I found your talks very interesting because I hadn't come across this before. So I am trying to drive my community to making their data more fair. And believe me, I'm starting from a very low baseline, and encouraging them to open data. Now, there's a lot of restrictions in what we can make open, but one of the key objections is they want to know how much it's going to cost to make data fair and open. And I was hoping a project like yours, an initiative like yours, would provide some sort of templated cost model that could be applied to different communities to assess the cost of making the data fair and open.
I don't know if you want to take it over, Rebecca. I think it's an amazing question. It's the $1 million question, but it was already done a study. I don't know if you remember that we had a discussion in the OSPP, and somebody came up with it's an analysis, an overview, not about how much it costs to have your data fair, but it's an analysis about how much it costs you don't be fair. I have to find the report. If you just drop me a line in my email, I will just put it in the chat now. Remind me, because I will look for that, because it was a very interesting approach, by the way, because it's more important to know how much it costs you not be fair. But I don't have the answer of how much it costs be fair.
I believe, Ava, that possibly it was Baron Mons that has this figure. I think he typically talks about it, and I can't remember what the sum is, but except that it's huge. It's billions, I think. But no, I agree. I mean, the challenge, of course, is it varies massively depending on the precise situation, the size of the data, the cost of creating it, the cost of storing it, the cost of curating it to a level that others can actually use it. And I know there's a lot of, I don't think there is an answer to it, unfortunately, at this point. I mean, I know there's a lot of discussion around, you know, whether the cost in some cases, I know, for example, Sanger in the UK have been doing a lot of work thinking about whether the cost of storing genomes and other related information is actually more expensive than doing experiment again, and how much to store, and whether just to store reference samples as opposed to everything. So there's a lot of work, I think, going on looking at it, but I'm not aware of a sort of definitive model, unfortunately, to look at that.
I see there are a couple of interesting links in
there.
I,
Thank you very much, Walker, because you just pointed out to the report that is absolutely a European Commission consultancy document, because it was done by PwC, but it's true that it's linked to the vraies relations, which is the French policy of open science, and this discussion was exactly in that context, Baron Mons and the policies and stuff. So thank you very much for the pointer. And also we have a comment here from Isabel. campus that perhaps, Isabel, you can comment yourself because you have the microphone, you're co-hosting the meeting.
Yeah, let me see. Yeah, it works. No, I was copying some links there for Sean on the question of the ORCID authentication. That we had a discussion recently with our technical people. As for, I just copied there. So if anyone wants to have a look.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very handy for everybody. Okay, thank you, Corina, that you mentioned also the report, the title. I don't see any other comment or question. Just check if I'm missing something on the chat. I don't know if we have something in the Q&A because Andrea, our hero, can you tell us if we have some QA or?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there is like 10 minutes before the break. So
okay.
Yes.
So we can just pass to the position papers. So that's fine. Thank you very much, everybody. So I would hand it to Sergio. He will lead the next part of the final session on position papers for EGI. Thank you very much, everybody. Go ahead, Sergio. Thank you.
Yes. So what we intend to do now is also to stimulate so what the final part of the session is the following. We want to stimulate also from you, from all the audience, and thanks for joining, to give us more insight and ideas of what the EGI Federation could do more to make open science a reality. And so you're welcome to suggest us how we can also, based on your experience on what is the role of the EGI Federation in the community, in the research community. And so we want to hear what we can do better. And to stimulate your thinking, the discussion, we invited two persons that will give a position statements from their viewpoint. So the first person is Sorina Pop, who is a CNRS research engineer at Creatis, and also is very important, is a Biomed VO manager. So she is the manager of a virtual organization in the area of biomed community, gathering around more than 1,000 researchers. And so she has very direct connection with the research practice on a specific scientific field. And the second position statement will come from Isabel Campos, who is a researcher of the Spanish Research Council. And she is also part of the EGI Council, and she contributed to the foundation of EGI. And she is representing the Ibergrid infrastructure, which is the digital infrastructure covering the Spanish and Portuguese region that support science in that area. It's also a member of the EGI Federation. So I would give the word first to Sorina for the first statement, and then we can move to Isabel.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Sergio, for the invitation. I'm honored to be here today. Thank you also for the very interesting talks. It's quite a challenge to sum up in a slide my viewpoint now for the biomed community, but I'll try to do as fast as possible, given the timing. So Sergio invited me and asked me to give a viewpoint for the contributions of EGI so far and the possible further support for open science. I would like to start with one big contribution of EGI is a simplified and open access to EGI resources via a unified VO-based access. So many of you may take this for granted today, but I find it impressive that more than 1,000 researchers from the biomed community can have a simplified access and open access to more than 40 computing sites. And in the biomed community, we are using some 500 CPU years every year, very simply, just by through EGI. So I think this is a huge step to open science, and I would like to thank EGI for this again. So for me, this is the biggest thing. Then we are here in the EGI conference, and we share ideas. And I think that EGI participates to open science through the conferences and events that it organizes, because it's very rich, and it facilitates the sharing on open science literacy. This session is a very good example, actually. Last but not least, the third example I wanted to give is the fostering of collaboration and interoperability through European-wide projects, such as the project that has been mentioned multiple times during the conference, the EGI ACE project. I think it is very, very important to involve communities in these projects, to talk together and to be sure we collaborate and we remain interoperable. So these are 3 examples of contribution so far. Let us move on to what I would like to see from now on. It's somehow in the continuity of what I've been doing, but I think we have to ensure even higher interoperability among services by promoting and enforcing open standards. We saw this morning the Gaia presentation made by Max, and I totally agree with him that we only can have one federated European solution. So this solution is based on interoperability. It's very important, and the first point I was mentioning, the fact that we have a unified and simplified access to VO, to computing and data resources through EGI, sometimes I fear that this is how could I say it? This is not something granted. Yesterday we were talking about HTC, HPC, different resources with different means to access them. We need to make sure that they will remain interoperable. That's the first point. The second point, it's to facilitate user identity management and access via a common unified framework. It's what I was also what I was saying. The access should be unified, and we shouldn't need different tools to access HTC or HPC resources. Moving to from the infrastructure to the fair part, the third point is support for easier access to research outputs via publication, curation, and tracking. And the fourth point, to facilitate discovery and sharing for resource software and data with high-level tools. Joining again what Max was saying this morning, we need ease of access for end users. So that's why I'm talking about high-level tools. We have the infrastructure, we work on it on the interoperability and the unified access, but we also need to work on high-level tools that would ensure researchers have the right tools for open access. Thank you very much. I will stop here so that Isabel can also give her point of view.
Thanks a lot, Sorina. Very interesting and useful information. Let's move now to Isabel. And
no, I was saying, Sergio, this is not the final slide. If you let me share my screen.
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Because I uploaded a moment ago.
Okay, thanks.
No, I have it here. Yeah, I guess you can see it, right? Mm-hmm.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, so I think it's very good that you choose the order with with Sorina first, because she started to make the point that I wanted to make, no? That open science is a process that takes place bottom up and the example of this biomed community that works in EGI is exactly a good example, no? Because this is catalyzed by the needs of a given research community to advance the progress in their research area. To me, is a personal version. This is a personal opinion. This is a Darwinian process, right? Because close science, with a few exceptions, yeah, related to, I don't know, secret defense research, extremely market-driven organizations like pharmaceuticals, for example, has a hard time to survive in a time in which cooperation is fundamental to expand the knowledge based on the experience of others, right? So Ibergrid as an umbrella organization for Spain and Portugal fosters the openness and transparency let's say, at the policy level, right? Because the openness needs to come from the researchers. All we are is facilitators of that openness. So we provide an open forum to share knowledge on distributed computing, which is, I think, is being appreciated by people in our countries. We promote the transparency in the infrastructure operational procedures. Transparency means we have open pages for accounting that are provided actually by one of our members for the whole EGI community. Sorry. And we promote transparency in the way resources are allocated. So this is, I think this is important for researchers to trust what is behind an infrastructure. And we also provide openly and freely technical feedback to the research communities that request us for such feedback. Right? So it's a sort of consultancy on what is available and what can they use, etc. And in that sense, you build a sort of trust that contributes to help people opening their research and sharing their data, etc. No? EGI.eu, and okay, we created this in 2010. So it's already 10 years of history behind. So in that perspective, when I think back, what has it helped EGI? It has helped to build community to begin with. This is probably the most important. This is also what Sorina was pointed out: transparency, transfer of knowledge between people. About the technical part of interoperability, etc. Sorina already described it very well. Yeah, we need the need for standards that can be adopted by everyone and that we can actually share services that we are using. Yeah. Also, EGI has helped, in my view, to support how to provide feedback from researchers and technologies to policymakers. And this didn't happen before we were in EGI. This has been a change. Now we have a channel to provide feedback on position papers, on on drafts of even at the work programs level. So that we have a channel to provide our view as distributed computing community in Europe on what we think on those matters. Yeah, and then this opinion is shared and is openly viewed by all the members of the EGI Council, etc., and it's openly discussed. And that, I think, has helped improve many things. No? And yeah, of course, since we are in a community event, in an EGI community event, I think the best practices in community event organization have also been greatly improved by EGI.eu. In the sense of having open information on program committees, open information on evaluation procedures of what is being presented or not. That is unfortunately not so common, so I wanted to point it out here. Yeah, and that was all. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Isabel. I agree with your points, and Yeah, even yeah, having open community, and as you mentioned, the last point is very important, also in the participation of to structure events like this and stimulate more grassroots participation. And so these were okay, the two statements and from Serena and Isabel. I wonder if there is some final message or questions. We are 5 minutes past the end of the session. The next one is starting in 10 minutes. So we should wrap up. Is there any final message from the audience or question? Otherwise, okay, if anything pops up in your mind, you can write to me about how EGI Federation can better support open science. And maybe I give the word now back to Eva for the closing the session.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for your participation. I think people probably will be very thankful if they have 10 minutes to grab a coffee or just go to the bathroom, something like that, because it's going on. It's very easy to follow these sessions, and it's very happy to see people attending them. That is one of the advantages of being in lockdown and things like that. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for letting us share in the OSPP work. And I think we didn't finish anything, we just started, and we want you to join us in the open science endeavors. Thank you very much.